Good morning, rejects. Now we all love our bolter-slinging, power-armor-wearing, heathen-slaying baddie, but I have a proposal for you. It's time we break the mold. Forget the flamers, forget the bolters, forget everything except the glory of the heavy stubber and praising the God Emperor. Kill me, burn! Kill me, burn! My bad, I got a little zealous there. Well, since it's Argenta, it might be all Cocoa for Cocoa Puffs. This Argenta build focuses specifically on massive burst range attack damage, focusing on the soldier's fired up trait to maximize her critical hit damage. Taking it from like a measly 5 to 6 damage per shot to like 44 or higher per shot. Combine this with 10 or more shots per burst attack and you'll be looking at over 400 damage with just one attack. And like, I've got this up to like 117 on a crit shot. It was, oh, so yummy. The base fire rate of the heavy stubber is 10, but with a few items and talents we can get it up to 13 or higher depending on all the items and talents you get. The stubber is also our go-to because of the massive ammo capacity it has, pretty much guaranteeing that we won't have to spend any action points reloading. Not that that really matters anyway, as the soldier class has a talent that gives you a free reload, which means you'll be able to fire 300 total shots without having to spend any points wasted in reloading. Now, if that hasn't got you salivating yet, then I'll raise up the stakes. With just one skill, you can simply shoot your enemies, convincing them to like lay down and take a nap, and then your team proceeds to just beat the shit out of him. You know that scene in JoJo's where they're drinking tea and then they just start kicking the shit out of that guy? That's what's happening here. Don't enough glazing my glorious build, let's get into it. The vid's going to be broken up in sections, so feel free to jump around with the timestamps in the description below. Section 1 is core talents and abilities. Now with this, I'm only going to be focusing on the first two archetypes, because as soon as you get to Exemplar, every build becomes viable. Like seriously, it's nothing but overpowered buffs in that. Your characters become living saints amongst the Chronos expanse. Like, I'm running out of breath because it's so good. Soldier is Argenta's base class, with War Priest being her origin, basically a full-on damage dealer that is all about causing as many wounds as possible and building up large momentum gains. You'll be using these class and origin features throughout the game, so let's like briefly talk about them. Run and Gun gives you extra movement points and also reduces your next attack's action cost. At the end of your turn, it'll cause you to become winded, but that's mitigated really fast, so don't worry about it. Revel and Slaughter is your next class feature, which removes the winded trait. It gives you bonus critical damage and crit chance, and gives you a bonus to your ballistic skill. Finally, Warheim is a momentum gainer. Basically be relatively close to a lot of enemies and pop it. It will immediately give you momentum based on the enemy type, which then can be used for your ultimate ability. Since Argenta is one of our first companions, we get a lot of free range with her, unlike the later companions whose archetypes are locked in once you find them. This gives us a lot of freedom to specifically hone in on making our rapid-fire goddess. Our priority stats we're going to be focusing on is ballistic skill, agility, and finally perception. Ballistic skill is for increased base range hit chance, agility for higher initiative and dodge chance, and finally perception for enemy dodge reduction. As for the other advanced skills, I mostly just have her pick up Medicae or Demolition. This is really up to you and your team composition. Just try not to have your whole team focusing on one skill, such as all of them having like Demolition or all of them having like Lore Warp. Spread out your skills, that's pretty obvious. So to save us time and a lot of rambling, I'm just going to like list out what talents, traits, and abilities you need to grab. You don't specifically have to have this in order, but this is the most effective way that I could organize this without making it like ridiculously long-winded, so just kind of bear with me, and I'll try to like show it on screen as I do it. It's kind of confusing. Rapid Reload is your first talent. This is just too useful for all parts of the game, especially before you have a really nice burst weapon. You just kind of need it. Take a perception increase after. Grab Nimble for dodge chance and another perception increase. Take Rapid Fire for double your rate of fire. The random trajectory sounds bad, but if you get close, which you will, it pretty much negates this. We are mainly taking this to increase our insane stacking of fired up. So you'll basically just like pop this early, shoot, and try to get as many stacks as you can. Next, take a ballistic skill increase and then heavy weapon proficiency. This will lower like the strength needed to use these weapons. After that, we're going to be taking up fired up, since it's our main focal point of the build. We take it now instead of earlier because we needed the other features to make use of our heavy stubbers. Take a skill increase, your choice, recommended is Demolition. For our first ultimate upgrade, take a rate of fire increase. It just means more bullets after you activate it. Our next feature is It Will Not Die. This adds wounds, which just means more survivability. It's really important for that up-and-close playstyle that this build is, so we don't really want to get one-shot by a sniper or something. Take a ballistic skill upgrade, and for our second ability, I like Controlled Shot. Since Argenta does so much extra sassy damage, it's important to not have our allies tanking that same damage as the enemies. So this just makes them automatically dodge. Take a skill upgrade of your choice, and then take an agility upgrade. Our next talent is Solid Projectile Weapon Expert. This will increase our minimum damage, which is always nice, followed by Second Skin, which causes medium armor to not have or impose dodge reduction. Some people like to get the late game Sororitas power armor, but honestly, instead of minimizing the damage, I just prefer to avoid it completely. I don't want to get hit. Our next talents are Swift Movements for more move points, and then I take No Heresy. This reduces Lore of Xenos and the Warp to 0, but gives you some bomb critical hit chance against non-human enemies. It's totally worth the trade-off, as Argenta will never use these skills. Take an awareness increase, and then to end the soldier tree, we are taking the third upgrade. For our second archetype, we want to take Arch Militant, as it's all about bringing a can of whoop-ass. The class feature is Versatility. The more you mix up your attacks, the more damage, crit chance, and really just everything you want to do increases. For our first ability, we take Wildfire. This gives you a free attack, and it stacks with more versatility. It will decrease the overall action point cost. So eventually it goes from 3 to 0. So the longer the fight goes on, the more you get to shoot. Just rotate between using different attacks in the mid game, so that way you can get it down more. Later on, it doesn't matter, as you'll be able to score tons of bonus attacks from your team. Next feature we want is Discipline. This is a big one. So when we get a free turn from an ally, we get even more versatility. It really goes with the theme of stacks upon stacks upon stacks, and it stops you from having to switch weapons. You pretty much just only have to use your heavy stubber now. Take a perception increase and then Overpower. Overpower increases crit hit chance and damage, which is just lovely. Take a ballistic skill increase, now followed up by our wonderful crowd control ability, Devastating Attack. Since we are only using the heavy stubber, we don't really have to read too much into it. This ability will cause enemies to fall prone if they fail a resistance check. Because we are using the burst attack, the target has to make the check for each bullet that hits, so it's pretty much a guaranteed stun. Our next talent is an increase to the ballistic skill, taking it since we don't really have too much else we need here. Demolition increase, and then we take Close Quarters Training. This will allow us to use the stubber within melee range. The penalty literally doesn't matter at all. Take another Perception increase. Remember, we are getting a lot of these for that sweet dodge reduction. Next talent is an increase to Agility. This helps improve our dodge and initiative. And take Critical Versatility for increased crit damage, and then a skill upgrade, your choice. Ballistic skill increase, and then for our first upgrade to the ultimate, we take Upgrade 4. This will allow us to get the massive bonus from the Soldier Combat ability, if combat even lasts that long. Your choice skill increase, followed by the Flash Fire talent. This will reduce the Wildfire ability action point by to 3 stacks of versatility instead of 4. Take an Agility upgrade, and then a Strength upgrade, just in case there's a heavy weapon that requires 35 instead of 30. It might not be necessary, but you never know. Take the Kick ability in case you want something to get the fuck off you. If they fail a check, they fall prone, which is always nice. And you can kick shit into a wall and it does more damage. Look at me bully this little guy. This dummy. Look at me using all of my abilities to stack and intimidate this little creature. And then I kick him and kill him. Take the Accustomed to Glory talent for increased damage when you or your allies use a heroic act. This should be pretty easy since you'll be building momentum like crazy just from killing the enemies. Plus the extra damage never hurts. Take an Agility skill increase followed by your choice of a skill increase. Take the Broad Expertise talent for a free ballistic skill increase just from entering combat, followed by another Agility skill increase. The next characteristics increase, I just go Toughness. It doesn't hurt to have more wounds, but it's up to you. Now, take Breaking Point for increased baseline damage with heavy weapons, and to end it out the Arch Militant tree, take the Stacking Crit Chance upgrade 2. When it comes to late game Exemplar, all of these talents are good, but the first one you should get is Perfection Under Fire. This is a flat increase to all of your characteristics, which is just cream of the crop goodness right there. By this point, you should know what works well for you, so feel free to explore Exemplar and just go from there. And that's all of our talents. I'm so sorry. I tried to organize that as best as I could. Now we're going to deal with more rambling. Section 2 is items. For the helmet, I like Gunslinger Helm. It increases range damage based on your rate of fire. Google says it can be found in the Ravaged Void Station in Langren's Belt as a random drop, but I think I got it earlier as a random drop somewhere else, so I don't know if someone can confirm that or not. For armor, you're trying to look for like the best medium armor you can, looking for something that has really high armor or something that has really good world traits. I choose the High World Voidsman since it has a 65% armor and a plus 15 to perception. Now, like I said before, armor doesn't really matter, but because we took second skin, there's no like dodge reduction on medium armor. You might as well try to get the best medium armor you can just in case you do get hit. So I forgot about the gloves. You take these gloves, they increase fire rate. They're pretty good. I don't remember where I got them. I can't find where I got them, but they're pretty good. For our first accessory, I choose the Bayonet Chain Knife. This inflicts bleeding whenever you make a ranged attack within one cell of the enemy. It also increases all crit damage coming their way too, which is, it's wonderful. You can get this from Riza with a high enough reputation with the Fellowship of the Void. She's at Footfall in like that bar area. I think like the Martyr's Embrace is what it's called. This also builds really well into our next accessory, which is Anatomist Amulet. Anatomist? Anatomist. This adds additional stacks of damage over time to whatever you cause to it. So by the time the enemy's turn, they should take like a huge bleed effect if you get it all set up right. You get this from like, oh my god, another word, Casilbila merchant with a high enough reputation. Our final accessory is Shadow Field. Until Argenta gets hit, she basically gets full cover, making her extremely hard to hit and allowing you to run all willy-nilly through the battlefield. You get this from beating the Chapter 3 final boss. Moving on to our main weapon, I choose the Calibrated Heavy Stubber. This is basically just an enhanced form of the baseline stubber, but your burst attacks only cause 1 action point instead of 2. This is awesome considering you get a lot of shots off even like with all the extra turns from allies you get. Like you're just constantly shooting this thing. As said before, the huge fire rate and massive ammo makes this ideal for our rapid fire build. You can find this at the Mechanicus Merchant from your Void ship with high enough reputation. Until you get this stubber, you just use the one you find from loot drops, or if you're lucky you might find another named one. I haven't found any better stubbers than this one, so I just keep using it. Our second weapon set doesn't matter, you'll never use it. But if you want something to go with it, I choose the Interrogator's Dagger, which pushes back enemies in melee ranged. You get this from the Inquisitor talk in Chapter 2 after choosing Dogmatic, but like I said, it doesn't matter. You're never going to use it. For our backpack, we choose something with a lot of words, the Tempest Carapace Elite Backpack. This increases your hit chance with your stubber and negates recoil. You can find it during the Quetzaltemer questline in Act 4, and if I remember right, it's behind a check or something, but I wasn't recording at the time, so my bad. For our boots, there are so many good options, but I choose the Adrenaline War Boots because it reminded me of Iron Warriors. It increases your dodge when you start your turn, and goes until the end of the round. You get this pretty early in Act 2 when you fight the Anvers gang. And since Argenta's agility is so high, she should be pretty close to the top, almost every combat. And that's it. Your consumable items is up to you, but I just take full survivability items in case she does get hit. There are so many items in this game that I'm sure I'm not using the most optimal things for my build, but hey, they get the job done damn good. Section 3 is team combos. This is a pretty short section, as you can pretty much figure out what works best. My biggest tip is having 2 support officers in your team comp. My main character, Caiaphas Cain, is a master tactician that uses Inspire to increase damage based on momentum gains. I usually always inspire Argenta to increase her next fully stacked fired up attack, which gives her some juicy, spelled with 2 O's, juicy crits. You'll use Voice of Command and bring it down to give her bonus stats and extra turns, which then stacks with her versatility because of the other talent that we took. So basically you're just spamming Bring It Down on her until she gets fully fired up. If combat even lasts that long, considering you're able to bring it down like triple-digit enemies really fast. Our second officer gets built into Grand Strategist, which focuses on creating zones around Argenta. These respectively give her different traits depending on which zone you're in, so it gives you like plenty of flexibility. Personally, I use the rear line on Argenta because she's dummy thick. That was inappropriate. I mean, I use rear line because she gets increased range damage, crit chance, and over penetration. It's really good for annihilating enemies. You can also use combat stratagems to buff her in different ways, such as Killzone to execute low health enemies, or Overwhelming Stratagem. I'll have to like dedicate a whole build to that class in order to explain it all, but for now, just do some reading on your own. Our final must-take class in this composition is Operative. You want to be throwing out as many exploits as possible, and then popping joint analysis for increased damage based on exploits. Personally, I like using Pascal, as he has multiple different ways to build exploits quickly. Simply exploit and profit. And that's it for this section. Feel free to add whatever other classes into the composition that you want. You have 2 free slots, so go crazy, go stupid. And finally, section 4 is general tips. Another mercifully short section since I'm pretty sure you're sick of me talking about this already. So, here we go. Argenta excels the more and more she gets into combat. She really focuses on getting her as many turns and attacks as possible. When she's fully fired up, almost anything dies during her turn. A good combo for her is to immediately pop Run and Gun, get in the enemy's face, use Rapid Fire Shot, and that should give you a lot of stacks and allow you to get that bleed we were talking about earlier. Use Wildfire to get some extra turns until you have enough momentum built to use your heroic soldier trait. If she doesn't get it on her turn, you can give her an extra turn with Bring It Down and then pop it so you don't have to wait until the next round to use her ability. A good tip for beginning combat as well is scanning the area before you start placing your little minions. Argenta can still be killed even if it is super unlikely with her high dodge chance, and of course Shadow Field. One sniper late game can take her out with 1 crit, so be mindful. For big boss enemies, your best friend is Devastating Attack. This mixed with Burst Fire is a guaranteed stun, so just knock them down and keep shooting them until not even a single atom of them remains. One of the biggest problems with this build is that it's just straight up like a D&D fireball. You can kill your allies extremely fast, even if the chance is low. 1 high-powered crit, and that's it. They're dead. Dunzo. Another enemy that can somewhat resist Argenta is enemies with high armor. I'm sure I've already used the Chaos Dreadnought footage, but if I haven't, cool. It's good to highlight that even though the Marines and Dreadnought have extremely high armor, it still doesn't matter. She eventually is going to be critting for insane amounts on these really tough enemies, so just keep doing what you're doing. Finally, like I mentioned before, trying to keep Argenta in your Tactician zones. This is just free buffs for you, so try to plan out where you want her to go. What I normally do is hold on to them, or just keep her out in the open with full line of sight on most enemies. Since you have Shadow Field, you're in full cover too, so like, you don't really have to worry about anything. Alright rejects, that was the video. If you made it this far, please like and subscribe. It always helps out. It's very much appreciated. And stay warm during winter. I know my little sausages right now are practically freezing.